Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Omega Metroid Podcast. My name is Andy Spiteri, joined by Dak. How you doing, man?
I'm good, Andy. How you doing?
I am doing great. I got my lucky Metroid hat on, ready to record some more Metroid news.
Nice.
Again, I know we said it about a million times last week, but God, I'm still so just pumped to be doing a Metroid podcast. It feels so fresh. Lots of good ideas, creativity coming out the yin-yang here, so I'm excited to dive into today's topic.
Yeah, man, me too. And before we go anywhere, though, since you brought it up, what is your lucky Metroid hat? What does that constitute?
I mean, I guess it's not really lucky. I'll tell you why it's lucky. Because I bought a Zelda hat, like a snapback hat or whatever, maybe like 2 years ago. Wore it around for 2 years, and the thing like just does not fit my head. I have to snap it on the very last like notch, and like I feel like I don't have that big of a head, but I had to snap it on the last notch, and it would always come unpopped or undone, and it would just be loose on my head, and I looked like a goof. So I saw this wicked Metroid hat on Etsy, which I'll post a picture of this hat over on the Omega Metroid Podcast Twitter at Omega Metroid Pod, and the design was really cool. It's got like a green Metroid, the green hat, the bill, is that the word for it? The brim?
Oh, brim, yeah.
Brim. There we go. Sorry, Canadian.
Brim sounds right. I mean, I'm not a hat expert, so.
Yeah, me neither. Actually, it took me a long time to get into actually wearing hats, but I digress. So I ordered this hat, and I was like, oh my god, maybe I just have a ginormous head, and it's a snapback. I can't even try it on. So it came in. It was off Etsy, like some little shop over in Taiwan, so I was kind of sketched out. But by God, it fits like an absolute dream. So I was like, man, that was lucky that didn't come in like a size XSS or something like that. So I mean, not really too lucky, but lucky enough. And it's Metroid, so I mean that's cool.
Yeah.
There was a couple cool Metroid hats over on Etsy. Now that I think of it, I was between the Metroid one and a Samus helmet one. That was both pretty cool. So there's a good hat story
that I've like. Good hats. All right, you have a good hat story. So are we starting a hat podcast? I feel like you have just as much content for that.
That's the only Metroid hat story that I have.
Okay.
What were you gonna say? You had a Metroid hat?
No, I was gonna say I had a friend of mine made me a Meta Ridley hat, and it's the only Metroid like hat I have at all. Actually, I guess only. No, I have a couple like Smash tournament hats, but like not too many like actual game hats. But that one's really cool. I think it's the only one that has like a Meta Ridley on the brim, so that's pretty sick.
Dude, we're gonna need to see a picture of that over on Omega Metroid Twitter, because that sounds absolutely unreal.
Yeah, I'll definitely post one. It's definitely, I don't wear like hats really, but it's something that's definitely a favorite of mine if I were to wear them.
I mean, I'm Canadian, so we just wear toques most of the time because it's always snowing here. So,
right.
Enough talk about hats, though. By God, let's get into it. This is the second episode of the Omega Metroid Podcast. We just want to thank everybody for the amazing reception to episode 1 of the Omega Metroid Podcast. Of course, that is available over on Podbean right now. If you haven't already checked that out, you can get a couple sneak peeks of what Dak and I think about the Metroid series and kind of where this show is going to go in the future. But yeah, just a really great response to the first episode. Just very thankful for everybody that tuned in, for everybody that interacted on Twitter. I want to give also a special shout out to our friends over at the Metroid Database. Again, I know we shout them out a lot, but man, they really helped us out. Just pushing it on Twitter, pushing it on Facebook. So really appreciate that. And I appreciate you listening to that episode and this episode. So once again, it's going to be, it's going to be awesome, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And I can't wait to get going. We are here today to tackle maybe the biggest subject in the Metroid world, the thing that's on everybody's mind, Metroid Prime 4, and specifically our hopes and our dreams for what we want to see from Metroid Prime 4. So I've jotted down a couple different points, Dak, and I don't want to go like too in the weeds here. I just have like a couple general points. But maybe we can kind of go back and forth. You could say one, I'll say one, and we'll just kind of go like that and build off of each other here. But I guess why don't you, take us away? Like, what is the thing that you want to see most in Metroid Prime 4?
Put me on the hot seat. What do I want to see the most? See, when I made my list, I jotted down a couple things as well beforehand, and I separated it between story and gameplay. So I didn't actually think about it like what do I want the most. Um, but if I had to pick one, I feel like I would really like to see the return of multiplayer. I feel like
Really?
that would be great. Oh yeah, I mean Metroid Prime Hunters is one of my favorite DS games, and I had a lot of fun. It's one of my favorite Metroid games as well. And even though Metroid Prime 2's multiplayer was a bit half baked, and definitely could have spent some more time in the oven, it was certainly kind of like a little bit of a side thing that wasn't meant to have too much development resource and time put into it. It seems, or like I guess that's how it ended up being. But that being said, I had some fun times with it, and I feel like if it was expanded upon, and they really expanded upon the Hunters gameplay that they provided on the DS, and actually gave it dual analog controls, which is another one of my wants for Metroid Prime 4 as well. That'd be great because I mean I'd love to play a game like that on the Switch, and sure, Nintendo Online isn't the greatest, but local play would be cool, and you can make do with what we have. If it's not that great, we could live with it in terms of like tick rate or whatever. But that being said, yeah, I would love multiplayer. Metroid Prime Hunters, one of my favorite Metroid games. I feel like there's a lot of opportunity to work with all the different kinds of characters and kinds of weaponry in Metroid that I feel like it's a no-brainer almost, especially when Metroid's kind of, this is going to be a really big game for it. So I feel like that'd be a good move to really get more people interested in the game as well.
I have to say, Dak, I am like, I just love your perspective on Metroid because I don't think a lot of the hardcore fans are gonna agree. Like they're kind of mostly of them. I bet you are thinking like keep multiplayer out of Metroid, but like the way you lay that out, like you're absolutely right. Like it didn't take away from Metroid Prime 2. I think that it, if anything, added to the appeal of that game. I just love that you kind of have a different perspective than your average Metroid fan. That's a great thing to lead in with. Here is
Yeah.
something that I jotted down, and it's very basic, very simple. But one of my biggest wants for Metroid Prime 4 is for this game not to be called Metroid Prime 4. I
Okay.
feel like that sounds weird. Like whenever you have a numbered series, one, two, and three is always okay. Five you can kind of roll with, but like anything else, I don't know. It just sounds odd to me. I'm a big
Hmm.
fan of like the subtitles. Like even when Metroid Prime 2 Echoes came out, I was like, I hate this. I wish it was just called Metroid Echoes or Metroid Corruption. So I hope, yeah, and you know what? I've kind of made my peace now with the Metroid Prime branding being on these different games. That's totally fine. Um, but I hope that it's like Metroid Prime something instead of like a numbered release, kind of like how I'll use a comparison to Assassin's Creed went from like 1, 2, and 3 to like Brotherhood or Revelations or Odyssey in the current Assassin's Creed games. So it's a very small thing, and I feel like nobody in the world cares about this but me. But yeah, I hope that it's not called Metroid Prime 4. I feel like that kind of, I don't know, takes away a
Well,
little bit for me.
I am gonna hit you with the big ding 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 disagree because I really well. First of all, I think you're late on the boat here because I think it's already called Metroid Prime 4. Though they could totally call it something else, but I know we kind of already know that it's called. It might be already officially Metroid Prime 4. That being said, I really hope it is called Metroid Prime 4. Um, I'm not a huge fan of like subtitles for a game series that's already using the numbers, like a sub series, for example, like when like Halo got to 5, right? It was Halo 5 Guardians. It's like, oh, we've already got Halo 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'd rather you just keep it 5 and 6 and not add subtitles. If you're just gonna add a subtitle, just drop the number, which you were kind of saying to an extent. They did that with like Reach and ODST. With Metroid, Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, Echoes, whatever, like those are fine, but if they're gonna make Metroid Prime 4, I'd like it to be called Metroid Prime 4 or Metroid Prime 4 something. If they called Metroid Prime 4 Metroid Prime something or Metroid something, I mean, we know it's Metroid Prime 4 though. People are
Right.
gonna call it that anyway. So like they're gonna be like, oh well, it could be called Metroid Destruction or Obliteration, but we're all gonna be but it's Prime 4. Okay, so like you might as well just like cut to the chase anyway. I think it's a great title too. I mean, Metroid Prime is a really cool name. I
But
think they
it's
should
it's a
continue
branding
to.
now, and the branding is like you're gonna get
Right.
this presentation of Metroid game. I just like my thinking is like you don't call Ocarina of Time Zelda 5, right? Like, I don't know. I
No.
feel like nobody except for me cares about this. Like, and I'm sure that it will have a subtitle, and I really don't care at the end of the day if it's what it's called, as long as we get it. But if
True.
I was absolutely picking, I would say like Metroid Prime. I don't know, Samus is back, baby, or something like that.
Well, actually, a couple points here that you're bringing up. First, Zelda isn't really. I mean, Zelda is what, like Zelda 2 is the only Zelda with a number in it. So like,
Yeah,
it's not really the same because like Zelda Ocarina of Time wasn't preceded by Zelda 3, right? It was preceded by A Link to the Past or whatever. So it's not a series that was already using numbers. Whereas Metroid Prime is a sub-series that's using numbers, and even in the mainline Metroid series, Metroid Fusion is called in-game Metroid 4 in another way. So it does, use numbering and to kind of like deviate from that, especially when Metroid Prime is a very strong name. And all three games, and even Hunters and even Pinball, are pretty well regarded, if not like very highly regarded. To not use Metroid Prime, to not call it Metroid Prime 4, I think would be a big whiff. Yeah, Zelda doesn't use that numbering. Also, you brought up Assassin's Creed earlier, which I think is interesting because Assassin's Creed 2, I think, was at its most popular when it was numbered. Like now it's
I
not
mean,
numbered and it's not as popular.
yeah,
Not that I'm
I
saying it
can't disagree with
correlates
that.
or there's like a causation there, but it is interesting you brought up in Assassin's Creed, where I think the most popular Assassin's Creeds were 1 through 3, right? Assassin's Creed 2, I think, was the peak of popularity for Assassin's Creed.
And
Not
you
that the
talk
numbering has
about
anything to do with it.
you talk about Assassin's Creed, talk about a series that has the opposite problem of a Metroid, whereas just there was so many games flooded out all at once that nobody cared. So I can't
Yeah.
disagree with you there.
That's another good point, and I hate to harp on this too much, but I do think it is an important point when you're bringing a game series kind of back a little bit because the game really hasn't had a standout good game since Metroid Prime 3, so that was 13 years ago. Um, I think it is really important to go with like your strongest foot forward, and people like the name. I think I would like to see it. I also think it would help not to confuse people. Because you could call it not Metroid Prime 4, and then people are like, well, then what is it? Where does it take place? Blah, blah, blah. It's Metroid Prime 4. You know when it already kind of know when it's going to happen, what's happening, etc. In a kind of way, what to expect, which I think is good for a series that does need another good like first impression to allow people get into people's good graces again after the past couple of releases. But yeah, I respect your take on it too, but I'm gonna give you that disagree. Boom. Hmm. Sure. So I brought up the like what to expect kind of thing, and I think a lot of people are expecting Silex to play a role in Metroid Prime 4. So I hope that Silex plays a role in Metroid Prime 4, a major one to some extent, but I hope his story ends there. That's a want for me for Prime 4, is that whatever story they're going to tell with Silex that they've been kind of not really hinting at in some points in time over the past decade or whatever they're going to do it in Prime 4 and I don't want it to bleed over because I would love it if we got into Metroid Prime or Metroid 5 whenever that comes out, if it does. Hopefully it does if Prime 4 is successful. And I want to get new stuff. I want the series to move forward. I hate that they were always retreading the same ground, and I would hate like for Silex's story to kind of not hate, but like I really would rather not his story not spill into future Metroid games because I think there's unless like somehow like it makes it's really cool or it makes a lot of sense. I don't know, but I feel like I would like it to stick to Metroid Prime and whatever they're gonna do. Let's end it there and let's. I would like some new characters. I would like some new stuff in future Metroid games. And for Metroid Prime 4, I'd like to see what they have in store for Silex, whatever that might be. But I'd like it contained to Prime 4, and I feel like maybe that's a weird want or something. But I don't know what your perspective on that is. So I'm curious.
Um, I this kind of bleeds into the next thing that I was going to bring up actually. So maybe I'll just kind of combine these answers.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be opposed to seeing him in Metroid Prime 4. I do think that. So, my next want is for a new compelling villain in the Metroid series, and perhaps even one that can talk, because historically, most of your big bads in the Metroid series don't talk. So, maybe someone that can verbally spar with Samus, or at least kind of go say some things that make you just be like, man, I can't wait to shoot this guy in the face and destroy
Mm-hmm.
him. Um, I guess my the only issue that I have with Silex coming back is like I don't know that a lot of people, like a lot of Metroid fans, are fully not aware, but like I don't know that he's as popular as like some of the hardcore Metroid fans maybe make him out to be. So I would worry that you'd have to spend a little bit of time kind of bringing people back up to speed. That being said, I thought that his story was interesting. There's certainly an intrigue to him, so I would be okay with him appearing in Metroid Prime 4. I would say to me maybe as like a side character that eventually you can kind of like win over and not like a direct villain. I do think that the Prime series needs a new compelling antagonist. Of course I'm sure that we're going to get Ridley and that's great and
Yes.
that it goes without saying there should never be a Metroid game without a Ridley battle. That's great, but traditionally he's not
Right on.
like he's not like your
He's not
personal
the
antagonist.
focus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what? Maybe he could be,
He
and
could
they
be.
and they could do that. But I think that like you look at the Metroid is unique in terms of Nintendo, and like the series almost goes through arcs of villains. Like the first three games were really about Mother Brain. The Prime series thus far was about Dark Samus and the Metroid Prime. So you kind of see like the rise and fall of these villains, and we kind of shift focus over to a new adversary. Ridley, obviously, being the exception, who's just your one constant. So I guess what I'm saying is I would like to see kind of the next character or the next villain introduced. Silex, I think, could be an interesting character. I don't know. I think I agree with you. I don't know that I would want him to be like a major staple in the franchise going forward. Like we've had him in Hunters. We kind of had the tease at the end of Corruption. Let's just kind of tell that story and get it done with. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think that kind of goes hand in hand with like let's present this character who has a lot of intrigue, and let's also present a new character and a new foil and a new um, obstacle for Samus to overcome.
Right. Yes, and that's another point I want to talk about too. This is story wise. Story wise, here's what I think. I just want to kind of just lay it out what I would love to see for Prime 4, and I feel it touches on these couple of things here and there.
All right, let's
So
shoot.
major villain I think should be Silex. Though I do agree that we need a new like major villain like direction for Metroid. I think that should be introduced in Metroid 5, and it'll likely be something Federation related, which is where the story is going at the time. I think that's fine. I think that's when you should save that kind of start of a build. Silex, though, I do think should be the major villain of Prime 4 if they're gonna do something with him, because at this point, like they've already teased it a couple times. He does seem to fit that criteria of a character who could potentially mouth off to Samus or whatever, or even not be a very direct antagonist towards her and the Federation, who at the time Samus is still pretty aligned with, and wholeheartedly. Um, Seems to really fit the bill of what they could use for a character that they could kill off right there. They can build up and remind people. I mean, remember in Prime 3, they built up all these hunters we had never met before, and at the end of the game, I mean, how many times I've heard people like, oh, Rundus dying is like one of the worst parts of, the Prime series. Like, they love Rundus or whatever.
Yes.
So like it's easy, I think, to build up a character and be able to kill them off or wrap up that story in one game. I think it not easy, but it's doable. And I think Silex already has some history, so you don't have to do too much catch up. You already kind of know what Silex is about. For people who don't know, they'll be caught up. And I do think they should make him the focus. That way, they can tell the story exactly like you said. Whatever story they're gonna tell, let's tell it, and then we can move on. Because Because I think they kind of have to save the future next big villain, whether like you said, like it was Mother Brain, then it was Dark Samus, Metroid Prime. Who's that next kind of big antagonist? I do think they should save that to start building that in Metroid 5 and wherever happens after that. Because you really realistically can't build a Metroid 5 and beyond villain in Metroid Prime 4, because I mean you kind of can, I think, unless that character for some or whoever it is or whatever it is for some reason disappears in the events of Metroid 2 through Super and Other M and Fusion and whatever like that. If that for some reason happens, I guess if that makes sense in story, they could do that, but I feel like it would make more sense just to save that for Metroid 5. But yeah, I would like to see Silex involved as the major villain, and then I would love to see something to do with some kind of side effects of Phazon being eliminated from like the galaxy and the universe, whatever, right? Because there's no way that Phazon just disappearing, right? Phase gone, all that, right? It's destroyed, source Phase-In. Phase-In is rendered inert, or whatever it is, the explanation. That there's no side effects from anything that was corrupted previously, right? Like, there's no way Sam was just, oh, I'm good, I'm back to normal, right? There has to be some kind of, like, withdrawal or after effect or something, right? That I would love to see if it would, like, kind of, if they would tackle that, right? Like, what are the psychological effects of being, having this kind of, like, corruption of your body, right? That takes a toll on you mentally and physically and emotionally and all of that. What are the side effects of all of a sudden that just disappearing from your body, right? Like, all of a sudden your body doesn't have that source of this corruption, which does feed into their abilities as a person. So of course, if it's removed from their body, all of a sudden there's going to be a major change, just like it would happen with anything. So I would love for that to also be kind of touched on. Maybe she's haunted by, like, images from, like, Prime 3 and 2 and 1, or, like, Dark Samus, right? Like, maybe she's fighting, like, a ghost of a character at some points that she's hallucinating. Like, I would love to see that kind of, like, a more interpersonal struggle for her, to also explain, like, how characters who were involved in this big plot of Phase-In and corruption are more or less fine in later games and seem to have no signs of withdrawal or anything.
I kind of agree, kind of don't. I think that it would be cool to kind of explore the after effects of Phase-In being gone. The only thing I worry about with kind of diving into Samus's psyche afterwards is, like, Nintendo. Granted, they didn't develop this game, but they showed us with Other M that they're just not very graceful when it comes to delving into
Team
Samus
Ninja
is.
wasn't.
Right.
Team Ninja wasn't.
So, I mean, I guess I'm willing to give that a pass. And, perhaps Nintendo Retro can do it better. I don't know if I want that yet with Samus. That being said, I think it's a cool idea to be explored. I would be more interested in seeing, like, the actual, like, ramifications of the Phase-In being gone. Like, how many of those Aurora systems were corrupted? Is there, like, an army of Mother Brains out there? That would be cool to me.
I agree to that. I think that would be included as well. 100%. Like, not just, like, the interpersonal, like, physical stuff, but yeah, all side effects of Phase-In just all of a sudden being gone, right? Like, maybe she goes back to a place that was previously corrupted by Phase-In, gets to see what it actually, like, looked like before. All the creatures, what they looked like beforehand, or whatever that is, right? Like, and yeah, I would love to see, like, the overall consequences of that, for sure.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Here's one that I'm going to throw at you that I feel like a lot of fans have been kind of clamoring for, but another contingent of fans have said it's unrealistic. It's not as in depth as the story that you laid out, but damn it, I want to fight Kraid in Metroid Prime 4. And I think that it can be done. I think it can be done. I've just heard people say that he's too big and that you can't do this fight, and I say shenanigans to that. You've had Samus go up against colossal bosses in the Metroid Prime series. You've had Samus go toe-to-toe with mid-sized bosses. Kraid could be either one. I just think that would be a cool little nod if, like, maybe, you run into the space pirates and then kind of re-engineered them. I feel like you don't need a storyline reason for Kraid to be there. He's kind of like Ridley in the sense that, like okay, here's Kraid and Ridley. Like, great. They resurrected him using dinosaur DNA. Perfect. Like, I don't care. I want to fight them as a Metroid fan. And I feel like you don't really need to explain that a whole lot. I don't think that it's as complicated as fans are making it out to be. I truly don't. I think that it would be a great fight. It would be a great little homage to Super Metroid, and I want to see it.
Interesting. God, I see. I mean, obviously, I don't think there's any, like, they could technically do it, right? Like, I don't think there's anything, like, stopping them from literally making the boss fight happen. Like, I'm sure Samus could face off in 3D against this big character. They were planning on doing it in the original Metroid Prime anyway.
Right.
So
is there a reason to?
Well, I think that's the kind of thing, because, and I hate to bring up Other M, but one of the things I didn't like about Other M is that it's shoehorned characters that otherwise don't really need to be there, right? It's just a crappy. I hate that game, but it's like it's decisions it makes in terms of implementing characters. So I'm thinking, sure, they could gameplay wise just put Kraid into the game, but looking at its story and lore wise, why would they ever do that? Like, the reason why Ridley is more valuable to resurrect, for example, is because he's more mobile, right? Like he's kind of their Darth Vader. He's the guy, he's leading the ground troops so he can move from fight to fight, lead the troops here and there. Kraid is just a monster that lived on the planet, and they just were like, all right, well, he's going to attack Samus because he's a big monster. So
And you know what?
Really
That's like,
on Zebes.
that's totally fair. And from a standpoint of like in-game lore, like, yeah, does it make feasible sense to fight him? No, but I feel like there's going to be a lot of fan service in this game, and almost like Metroid Prime 4, I feel like is almost going to be like an apology to Metroid fans. I think it's gonna be like, okay, like we're back with this franchise, we're serious about this franchise. Here is everything that you love. Here is what we're going to give you. I think that would be really cool. I think it's something that fans of Metroid have wanted. Already.
So?
I mean, I think so. I feel like
Metroid fans don't react well to fan service. Like I feel like you're saying this, and I agree that like they probably are looking at it like, wow, we really have to get in the good graces of the Metroid fans and all that to win everyone over and be like, this is a serious endeavor. We're making Metroid Prime 4. This is a game you got to play. But they put Ridley in Samus Returns. Spoiler alert. And a lot of people don't like that. Other M again brought in characters that didn't seem to really need to be there. A lot of people didn't like that. I feel like historically, Metroid fans don't respond well to fan service, and so if you want to play it safe with Metroid fans, you almost don't want to give them like they don't want to. Do they necessarily? I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of people that want to see Kraid, and I would love to fight Kraid. I'm not even if I play Metroid Prime 4 and I turn a corner and there's Mecha Kraid or whatever, right? Or Kraid's there, and the explanation is, oh, we had Kraid DNA, so we made a big clone Kraid. Fight him. I'm not gonna roll over in my bed and not sleep at night over that. I'll probably have a great time. But
right.
That being said, is it the scenario you do that in, like on the new game that like everyone's like really like clamoring for? It's 13 years since the last one, and you're gonna bring back like Kraid? Like, is that I don't know. I feel like that's like.
See, I know that you're gonna disagree with me because you're a Ridley fan. But I mean,
a big Ridley fan.
There are multiple games where Ridley has no business being in those games. I mean,
right, let's run it right now.
Corruption,
let's do the gauntlet.
I mean, even in Corruption, he doesn't necessarily like he was already defeated in Prime. I feel like a lot of that battle was added in just because you have a Metroid Prime game and you want to have a Ridley battle. You didn't really serve a whole integral point to the story. But just to dial back for a second here, I really. Right. Like, I guess, first of all, like, I don't think that Nintendo should be playing it safe with Metroid Prime 4 at all. Secondly, is, like, this is kind of... I feel like this game is going to be a love letter to Metroid fans. I've seen Metroid fans being, like, kind of going back and forth, talking about fighting Kraid and Prime for years and years and years. Let's get it done. I truly don't think that there's going to be a contingent of fans being like, this is stupid and it makes no sense, versus the majority of fans that are going to be like, this is awesome, I'm fighting Kraid in 3D. Is it something that, like, is it something that absolutely has to happen to make or break the game? No, of course not. Would it be cool? Yeah. And you know what? You could absolutely be right, too, because, I mean, you're right about Ridley and Samus Returns. There was a little bit of backlash to that, but I do think that that's kind of a vocal minority. Yeah.
You're right. Yeah, I see what you're saying, and I'm with you on the hey. If they put Kraid in, I'm fighting him. I'm gonna have a great time. I see what you're saying. Yeah, I do think that like the people who would enjoy fighting Kraid would outweigh the people who would be like, oh, but this doesn't make any sense. Why would they do that? Blah, blah, blah. So I'm with you there, because there are certainly situations in other games where like, why is this happening or whatever. So yeah, like I think if they somehow, as long as it makes sense, because at the end of the day, like if it's a game, and yeah, it would be really sick to fight Kraid in 3D. He's huge.
Yeah.
A huge monster is awesome to fight as Samus. So I'm totally down for that. And to be honest, if I were to fight another large monster to that scale in Prime 4, part of me would be like, oh, this could have been Kraid. So,
right? If you're going to fight a big ass monster, might as well be Kraid.
Right, and if they came out with some kind of cool, like, oh, it's Kraid, but it's like a hybrid Kraid mixed with something else, and that's why we made it, because we're using the DNA of some creature on the planet or something, something that at least, like, then I'm like, hey, man, like, you know what, you do you, let's roll it, let's shoot it out, and I'm totally down. So, like I said, I don't want to be like, that doesn't make any sense, Kraid, no, I'm with you on it, and I do think, like, hey, if they're gonna make this game and really try to, kickstart or kind of get the ball rolling even further, then no, I don't think they should play it safe. So hey, if they got a really cool, crazy idea to implement Kraid and it's a fun fight, then by all means.
Yeah, and I mean it can be something as simple as like I don't know, we found Kraid DNA and we've infused it with this new blah blah blah. You know what I mean? I don't think it has to
Yeah.
be anything too
Yeah.
complicated for to make people happy. So that's one of the little things that I thought would be cool. Hit me with what you got next on your list.
Well, I think we've already covered this a little bit. I do want Ridley in it, obviously, but I think I could spend a whole episode on talking about him. So
And
more,
we will
way more
in the
than that.
future, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely need him in there. I feel like there's no reason not to have him in there. He shows up in the games that bookend it. So, what else? I would really like to see. I would love to do maybe a little section where you control Samus's gunship.
I love that.
And have a. I
Yes.
think that would be really cool. So, like, again, I'm bringing up Halo. If you ever play Halo Reach, there's a campaign mission where you are fighting in like one of the ships out in like orbit, fighting Covenant forces. I think it'd be really cool to have her gunship and be in control of it and really kind of take full advantage. It's been included in the games really kind of sparsely, and I think there's a lot more they could do with it. I think what they did in Prime, like slowly but surely evolved into something that's a really cool part of the Prime series. I love what they kind of did within Prime 3, like all the different, functionality it had. I would love for them to expand on that more and also give us, more full control of that and really kind of take control. Now, of course, it's like would be a pretty solid deviation in gameplay, but I think it'd be really cool and I would love to see what they would do with it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I love that. That was something that was on the bubble of my list, and I was like, maybe I'll leave that. But I did like the gimmick in Metroid Prime 3 where you control the gunship with the visor. I thought that was really cool, but I wanted it to go further.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
Do you remember Star Fox Adventures back in the day?
I do.
That my only fear is that it would turn into when you were going from planet to planet in Star Fox Adventures, there was like the little on rails classic Star Fox segments, which I mean those were pretty cool, but they were like definitely tacked on. I'd want to find a way to like make it seamless into the gameplay, but if they can, and I'm sure they can. I mean, if they can resurrect Kraid, they could definitely work a gunship battle into there in some way. Yeah, I mean that would be awesome. Like especially ever since Corruption. Like when Corruption was first announced, I was like, this is so cool. Are we gonna get? Basically, I was thinking that we were gonna do that Star Fox Adventures kind of thing where you go from planet to planet, weaving your way in and out, fighting, X-wings in space. So yeah, I would actually love to see that. So I agree with you 100%. Here's one for you, and I'm not sure if you're going to disagree with me or not, but
Okay.
this is something that I feel that Metroid Prime 4 should do, and that is to keep the 2D stuff 2D. So in Metroid Prime 2 and Metroid Prime 3, they introduced wall jumping, the space jump, and the screw attack. I think that all of them suck in 3D, and they don't work, and they feel tacked on. Those are great in 2D Metroid games. Let's keep them in 2D Metroid games, and let's build on the strengths of what Metroid Prime 4 does best. Visors, beams, platform. Like, just stick to your strengths, and don't necessarily shoehorn in these things to make, kind of like we were talking about, to make fans happy. You can make fans happy in certain aspects, but, like, I just feel like if the screw attack isn't done well, then don't put it in the game. And I don't feel like it was done well. Now, granted, if there is a way that they can fix the screw attack and get it to be so seamless where it's like turning into the morph ball, which really is one of Metroid Prime's greatest strengths, is how flawless that morph ball is. Then I'm all for it. But I don't think that it worked the way that I hoped it would, and that a lot of Metroid fans hoped it would in Corruption and Echoes. And if you can't get it to work seamlessly, maybe let's not do it.
I do think there's the issue of like, for me, and that always happens with games that take place between other games, is why would Samus not have an ability she has previously and afterward, right? Like, why would she not have the screw attack if she had it in Metroid Prime 2 and 3 or whatever, and then has it in preceding or succeeding Metroid games, right? So there's that one thing where I'm with you on, yeah, if it's not going to work, don't include it, but they almost kind of write themselves into a corner because they can't really do that in all situations, because then they have to have some kind of weird explanation for why she has or doesn't have something, in terms of her ability capacity, right? Like, so in that regard, I feel like it is kind of hard because they kind of almost have to include some of these things because she has them previously and afterward. That being said, I do think they should stick to the strengths. I really do think they need to, uh, do more with like visors and guns. Or weaponry in general, just the armor she has, and really evolve and expand on that. I know we've talked previously. I don't mind the ammo system from like Echoes. I think that'd be cool if they played with that again. I think there's a lot they can do. At the same time, I would like it if they made her a little more, like a little faster, maybe a little more acrobatic. And I think that's where those abilities do come in. Whether or not they're implemented well, of course, that's like depends. I mean, Prime 2 and 3 are from another decade, right? Like there's a ton of, advancement in game development in general in terms of how they approach, platforming and movement and whatnot in first person shooters. So maybe they would turn out good, and they could have a really good iteration of the screw attack and whatnot, in a 3D Metroid game. So I would
and I would love to see that. Like if they can get it where it is awesome, like I am 100% down for that, because I mean, the screw attack is like the master sword of Metroid. That's your ultimate weapon. So to not have it does feel a little disappointing, but I think like Prime 1 really showed me that I would rather not have it than have it and it be kind of lackluster.
That's fair. Yeah, that's definitely fair. And those are things that are like not easy to implement either. It can be very hit or miss. So, it's certainly a risky investment. But at the very least, I would like to maybe get a slight increase in base walk speed. I don't think she needs to be that slow. She doesn't be like walking at like a crawl sometimes. But another thing, I would like, since we're kind of on like, movement a little bit, or like capacity in terms of what she can do like in her environment, I really would love more usage of the grapple hook. Like the grapple being the grappling hook. I love when you're able to use it, but it feels so limited in almost every Metroid game. Like they got the grappling beam with Metroid Prime 3, you're able to like rip the pirate shields off, which I thought was cool, but it's really kind of like a E3 trailer gimmick, right? Where you kind of see that in the game and you're like, oh, or the trailer, like, oh my God, that's so sick. Look at the interactivity. But then you do it a couple times, like, oh, it's not really that cool, and then it becomes kind of, your routine kind of gameplay and doesn't become special anymore. I would love it if they really implemented grappling more in the game in general, being able to grapple for more stuff in 3D, being able to interact with the environment more, being able to reach stuff and do cool things with the grapple beam and give yourself a little more of a sandboxy kind of play there, which I feel like she would do in real life, maybe not entirely full Spider-Man, but I think a little more usage of grappling I think would be really cool.
Yeah, I'm not against that. I thought that the grapple was. It felt like it was the right usage for me in the Prime games, especially in Corruption, where you're kind of, especially in the Sky City, you're going down, you're on that roller coaster. Like
That's
that was
true. Yeah,
that
like
was pretty
that.
cool.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, like essentially, and I'll say this would apply to almost anything. If there is, a great gameplay mechanic and you can use something like the grapple more, or some kind of new weaponry, visor, whatever. Yeah, I'm absolutely all for that. I don't know that I would have picked the grapple, but
What would you pick?
I would pick, like, to me the Prime series is really all about the visors more so than Samus's like weaponry. I think the weaponry is, to me, feels like more of like, it feels more important in the 2D games, where in the 3D games the visors and I guess the beams as well, but especially the visors to me really kind of make the experience, because you're looking through Samus's perspective, and when you switch visors, of course, you're switching how you see the game. So
Yeah.
I would love to see more. Like, I'd actually love to see more than 4 visors in this game too.
That'd be cool.
I didn't write this down on my list, but like, there's nothing
That's a
really
good
holding
idea.
us to 4 anymore, because we can do anything we want. We don't have the C stick, which can only go in so many directions. So I mean, yeah, I mean, go crazy with all the different visors and stuff. That being said, I do think that, like I said, if there's a wicked hook, or a really cool mechanic for any of Samus's abilities, grapple included, I'm down for that. I
I
basically think like any way you can implement her gear in
Yeah.
clever puzzle scenarios, like sign me up.
Oh, 100% agreed. And honestly, I'm so with you. I never really thought about that. I've always had like, oh yeah, you can only have, you just think you have 4 visors because that's how it is. But I would love it if someone's like Majora's Mask, you like collect all these
Oh my
different visors
god.
and whatnot, and have all these different visors for different situations. That would be really cool. Like, I
That
think
would
that'd be
be
really
so
sick.
good.
I've never really thought about that, but that's now that you said it, I'm like, wow, I really want that now. That sounds amazing, and that's a great way to capitalize on what, like you said, what makes Metroid Prime strong. And again, the visors, the beams, the beam combos, and then of course how the game is played are certainly what stand out about Metroid Prime. So yeah, that's a great idea. I would love that.
All right, I have one more on my list,
Mhm.
and then we can maybe get out of
I
here.
have one more quick one, but
Yeah, okay, you
'cause,
go
yeah, so
first.
no,
You go first.
now I'm interested because I feel like I just went with the grapple stuff, so I would
Oh,
love to
okay,
hear
okay, okay.
what you're gonna say.
So this is again a little bit of a minor one. I hope that there's more distinct and different suits. I missed that
Yeah.
from Corruption. I think it goes without saying. A lot of fans I think are kind of of the same opinion. I just love seeing Samus in her different suits. The light suit is iconic. The Phazon suit is iconic. I hope that comes back, and maybe with like different augmented abilities with your suit. I did think that was missing a little bit from Prime 3. So yeah, I
Oh,
hope that
I'm
there's a
with you
different
there.
selection of suits.
Yeah, definitely. For sure. I think that's another thing that Prime excels at, especially Prime 2, for sure. I mean, the
Right.
Prime 2 suits are amazing. I
And
wish
and
there were
that
more of
feels like a
them.
no-brainer to me, like almost something not
Yeah.
worth mentioning because I'd be shocked if there wasn't more of an array of different suits, but I thought I'd say it nonetheless because it's just one of those little things. Like Samus just looks so cool, and she did
Hmm.
look cool in Prime 3, especially towards the latter part of the game where you could see the corruption in her suit. But yeah, I think that I would like to move kind of back to where we were in Echoes.
I do agree. That being said, I do like what they did with Prime 3 as a kind of like a little like deviation from how they approach the suits.
Actually, yeah, I
Um,
like it too. Like it
I
was a
really
great
do like it.
idea. I'm just
Yeah.
I'm ready to
But
go
I'm with
back.
you. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like I liked it for what it was at that
Yeah.
time. It's good. Give me back to all these cool and different diverse suits that Prime 2 did and Prime 1 did. And I'm also a really big fan of the base fusion suit, but that's another discussion. But anyway, yeah, I'm with you on that as well. Um and I guess since we want to wrap this up for sure, the last thing I want to say, and again, because yeah, I think the last thing on my list I didn't mention, other than what I'm about to say, is like I want dual analog controls, so that'd be great. Just
Yeah,
regular
for sure.
controlled dual analog stuff. Hey, if you can even let me plug in a mouse and keyboard to my Switch somehow, whoo, that'd be great. That being said, the one last thing, and again, I am the last person to give Other M any kind of praise, but if they could somehow implement the cool kill moves, the cool finishing moves that Samus had in Other M into Metroid Prime 4, I would be a very happy camper. I love when you're playing a first person shooter and you can come up to someone and it goes into third person, you get this cool animation, and you're like, oh, stab him in the back, or you suplex him, or whatever. That is one of the very, 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 very small parts of Other M that I truly, truly did like. And I wish that Metroid would continue. Metroid Samus Returns kind of that with the counters kind of had that's a kind of vibe a little bit, not the full commitment like Other M did, where it was really kind of cinematic and really acrobatic. It was really cool. I love that. Samus turns it a little bit, but I love it if Prime 4 goes all in new finishing moves, some cool ways, and that would really work in multiplayer too, because then you could implement them in multiplayer and all of that if they did that as well. That's a big want of mine. That's one of the only things I think should ever be taken from Other M in future Metroid games. So if that's one of the things that I would also could get in Prime 4, that would be splendid.
I can't wait to talk about Other M with you.
Oh my
I
god.
cannot wait.
I feel like some people are like, "Oh my god, this guy just hates this game. Like, screw this guy," which I can understand, but
I don't think I don't think that I know any Metroid fans that truly love Other M.
no, but
I
there are
really
fans that
don't.
don't think it's that bad, where I think it is really that bad. So,
I
it's
can't wait to talk about that.
yeah,
That's going to be one heck of an episode.
for sure.
So yeah, that is. There are just some of our hopes and dreams for Metroid Prime 4. Of course, we are not done talking about Prime 4. That is going to be, hopefully, all we're going to be talking about post E3 if we finally get some news about it there. Here's, fingers crossed. But yeah, we hope that you guys had a super time listening to this episode. We, of course, want to know what your hopes, dreams, thoughts, prayers, anything are for Metroid Prime 4. Hit us up at Omega Metroid Pod. I'll get that right one of these times. And let us know what you think. That's going to do it for us for episode number 2 of the Omega Metroid Podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. Of course, thank you to our friends over at Metroid Database for helping share this episode with you guys. And I can't wait to be back. In the meantime, you can follow me at Spateri316. You can follow Dak at @TheRapture_ over on Twitter. We want you guys to head over to Podbean, iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. Like, subscribe, recommend us to a Metroid fan. Man, if you've got a guy in your life or a girl in your life who's crazy about Metroid and they've been going, they just have no source of talk for Metroid, hook them up with the Omega Metroid Podcast and save a life if you do. That's going to do it for us. Thank you guys, and we will see you next time. Peace out.